Last night, the atmosphere was fantastic at Madison Square Garden. 15,000 in attendance at MSG. Game gets going right around 7 o'clock Eastern time. Couldn't wait. We joked around about it on Friday, and it was everything atmosphere-wise that I could have imagined, right? A kind of a return to normalcy kind of a moment as Sunday was, whether it be, Phil with the Kiawah Island and the tremendous crowd there. Brooklyn had a great crowd on Saturday night as well with the Boston Celtics in town as the Nets took care of business. So the crowd and the atmosphere was fantastic. The game was a massive disappointment at the end. I mean, it just was. I mean, there's no other way to cut it. I mean, it's easy to say and sit here as a longtime Knicks fan that the pain and the disappointment felt good because, there were expectations on this team. But, lose to the Atlanta Hawks 107-105, to have that game where you needed it in that fourth quarter, to where the offense, even though Julius Randle was not great, to get the performance that you did by Alec Burks. By the way, it's Alec, not Alex. From Alec Burks in that fourth quarter, dropping in 18 points as he finished the game with 27. You can look at this Knicks team and say, well, there's a couple of things that are disappointing. Number one is the defense on Trae Young. They've got to get back to work. And I know Tom Thibodeau after the game said, well, not one thing is going to work the entire game for sure, but can you get Trey Burks to go to his offhand at some point in time to where he's not driving with his right hand to the rim and getting the shot that he wanted, that little floater? At times it was Olay defense parting the Red Sea as he was getting layup after layup. He was getting foul calls down the stretch as well, some legit, some not so much, but that's what happens with stars in the NBA. Stars do get calls, and Trae Young is going to be working the officials throughout the course of the game. So you get to that last defensive possession in which Trae Young hits that floater. Bad help defense by Julius Randle. Bad defense by Frank Ntilikina, not making him go left, making him go right. He goes right, gets the rim, hits that floater. Randle's late to close it out, and he hits that bunny, and then it's 0.9 seconds to go. And I got to be honest with you, the inbounds offensive possession, the inbounds play was atrocious. I mean, Julius Randle didn't even get the shot off with 0.9 seconds to go as the Hawks celebrate. Randle's, you have Trae Young telling the crowd to be quiet after the game as they've got the chance riding him throughout the course of the game, and the Atlanta Hawks win game 1 107-105. I understand it was not a great Knick performance because their great star, Julius Randle, was 5 of 23 or 6 of 23 from the floor, so he was not particularly good offensively. However, the Knicks had that game where they needed it to be in that fourth quarter, and unfortunately, they did not finish, and the Hawks did.
Okay, so first off, no panic. No panic. Game one. But what was so disappointing, Moose, I think that was a good word to use, and what was so mind-boggling is that the two guys who have gotten you here this season were the two guys who let you down the most in game one, and that's Julius Randle and that's Tom Thibodeau. The two guys who are most responsible for this, for the turnaround at Madison Square Garden, for all of this amazing positivity around this team, those are the two guys who I thought both had bad games in game one. Obviously, Randle, because of the poor shooting. Julius Randle, now after the game, he said that maybe he did too much in the off week between, their last regular season game and the playoffs, and so we can dive more into that. But Randle had a really bad game because he couldn't shoot, but also was not great distributing the ball either. 4 assists, but 3 turnovers in this game. And they really, either he took himself out or the Hawks took him out, and I think it was a little bit of both. And then for Thibodeau, I was honestly left wanting a lot more from the coach in game one. I thought the end of game situation stuff, the Knicks looked disorganized. I mean, before Trae Young hits that shot with 9 seconds left to go, the Knicks had 4 players on the court. I mean, they had to rush Alec Burks in from the sideline. He didn't even know who he was supposed to cover at that point. Timeout. I mean, I know they ended up needing the timeout to advance the ball, but at that moment, when you know that the ball's going to Trae Young and you have a dangerous Bogdanovich on the wing, timeout. Get yourselves organized there. I thought that was bad. You mentioned the final play that the Knicks had with 0.9 seconds left. I mean, Alec Burks had 18 points in the fourth quarter. He's inbounding the basketball. I just didn't understand it. We can also get into Ntilikina just being ice cold and being asked to come in off the bench at the end of the first half and the end of the game to cover and try to defend Trae Young, and he was just not up to the task there. I mean, Ntilikina's like not even in the shot when Trae Young is making that layup. So, listen, Nerlens Noel going out of the game I think was a bigger factor than people gave it credit for because Trae Young was going downhill the entire fourth quarter. Meanwhile, he played 8 minutes of the fourth quarter. He was going downhill. He was getting calls in late in the game, going perfect from the free throw line, as you mentioned. So I was really most disappointed by Randle and Thibodeau. Good thing, though, those are also the two guys who I expect to have the biggest bounce back in Game 2, because we know that Thibodeau is a fantastic coach, especially in playoff series. His adjustments are going to be key, and I cannot believe, after all we've seen from Julius Randle this season, Moose, that he could have another clunker of a game in him like he did in Game 1.
Yeah, he was bad. I mean, there's no other way to cut it. He was bad. Maybe it is a case that, I mean, he kind of used that as an excuse. Maybe he did too much lean into Game 1 on Sunday night during the course of the week, Maggie. I don't know. I mean, but I thought the Atlanta Hawks did a nice job as well defensively against Julius Randle and made things tough for him. They did. And even though, Burks was great, finished the game with 27 at 18 in the fourth. He did miss one, with under a minute to go in the game. A shot that you thought at that time Alec Burks was definitely going to make because of just how hot he was in that fourth quarter. Yeah, you have every right. Listen, I mean, is Frank Ntilikina Scottie Pippen and I missed it all of a sudden? I mean, the idea that he is this unbelievable defensive stopper that he needs to be put in the game, ice cold against Trae Young. I mean, I just don't see it. Is his lateral quickness there with Trae Young? It is not. I mean, by the way, the team defense on that play, Julius Randle as well has got to get high. You got to give a little bit of help. And if you want to be fair, Trae Young, as he hits that bunny with 0.9 seconds to go, he also got fouled by Julius Randle on the play, who came in on the hard closeout as well. They called a similar play a foul earlier on in the fourth quarter because he knocked Trae Young right down to the floor. So I don't understand where that defense was. And I can be honest with you, we talked about Frank Ntilikina before the start of the series. If you're going to use him, you can't bring him in ice cold. Then you got to use him. You really do. But somebody tell me something about Ntilikina where he is going to all of a sudden step into the. If he is going to be that good defensively, then you know what? He should play a lot more than 1 minute in Game 1 last night on 2 possessions to try and keep Trae Young away from the basket and try and prevent him from scoring, Maggie. But I just don't see it. I don't look at Ntilikina as being that kind of guy. And you're right about the inbounds play. With 0.9 seconds to go, listen, I didn't think the Knicks were going to score, but I thought they'd get a significantly better look than the one that they did. It was an awful inbounds possession. It really was. The toss to Julius Randle, and all the Atlanta Hawks had to do there defensively was make him kind of alter his shot a little bit, cause a little bit of hesitation, and he wasn't going to get the shot off with 0.9 seconds to go. So it was a terrible offensive set off the inbounds play. By the way, that was their last timeout. I get the fact of calling a timeout before that, but they wanted to make sure they kept one in the books just in case they hit a shot so they could advance the basketball. But here's what it comes down to: is disappointing. It really was. It was disappointing watching it, and you're right about, Thibodeau will bounce back, this team will bounce back. All was not lost last night. The atmosphere was fantastic, but you had that game right where you wanted it, and you let it slip through your fingers. If you were just a little bit better, a little bit more efficient offensively, a little bit better defensively, Maggie, you're talking about a Game 1 Knicks victory, leading this series 1-0, getting ready for a Game 2 on Wednesday night.
Well, what it does is it just puts so much pressure on you for Game 2. Not that there isn't pressure in every single playoff series, but you don't even have one in the bag, You couldn't even, finish one out with the home crowd there when your superstar's having a terrible night, and you were right there. You're right there. Kudos to the bench and other guys who stepped up. And listen, I understand that Tom Thibodeau has a difficult job because he doesn't want to play Derrick Rose 35 minutes a game. I get that. You don't want to play him 35 minutes a game. And Rose was great last night. You want to maybe keep him around, 30 minutes or so? If we're being honest here. So he's got to try to steal minutes places. I think Elfrid Payton is still starting for some God knows reason. He plays 8 minutes and he's an absolute zero, but they need to steal some minutes here. Same thing maybe with a Frank Ntilikina as your defensive specialist or whatever. I don't know. It's not so much about Rose with Ntilikina in the final possession, but you understand what I'm talking about. They're trying to mix and match here with the guard position, A, because Trae Young is awesome, and B, because I think they want to really monitor the minutes of Rose and make sure that he is so crisp for them in the second half when they need him. So I get this isn't easy, but at the same time, that's why I would have called the timeout right there before Trae Young moves, because I know you want to keep it in the bag for afterwards to advance the ball, but you were unorganized defensively. And what did it lead to? It led to one of the, more obvious Trae Young baskets of the entire evening. I mean, and I don't know if there was anything they could have done to stop Trae Young. At that point, he was really on a roll. But I would have wanted to
force him to go left.
Well, they couldn't.
But it was terrible defense. I understand that. You gotta do something to force him to be uncomfortable. And listen, even if he goes left and he gets to where he wants to go, he's probably going to score anyway. But can you make him go to his offhand a little bit? In that fourth quarter, just a little. Can you make Trae Young a little bit more uncomfortable than you did? And Maggie, maybe it wouldn't have mattered at all. Maybe it wouldn't have. But now all of a sudden you're looking at Ntilikina, headband and all. He's sweatband and all. Hopping into the game like he's all of a sudden this defensive whiz. I understand that's the strength. Frank Ntilikina is a stiff. Let's be honest with you. He's not a particularly good basketball player for what you were expecting him to be to what he is. He's really not. He's never developed offensively. We've been waiting here. He was the fill guy, the triangle offense. Now you're putting him into a late in the game, ice cold, mind you, ice cold, stepping into the game, 9 seconds to go. By the way, go stop Trae Young, who's hot as a firecracker in the fourth quarter. My God. What are you expecting there in terms of, Ntilikina's got no shot at stopping Trae Young there, but can you at least defensively? And here's the other thing, Julius, leave your guy a little bit earlier and have a little bit of the closeout because let's be honest, Trae Young, those passes on the interior were flying out of bounds. How many turnovers did he have in the fourth quarter, Maggie, where it was John Collins, whether it was Clint Capella? How many times did you see him try and make the pass late as the defense did close him out, where he was throwing the ball out of bounds or making a very, very tough pass to one of his bigs down low? Get the ball out the ball out of his hands or make him go left. That defensive set there for the Knicks was absolutely despicable. It was terrible.
Well, you're asking Taj Gibson, who has a lot of playoff experience, and I know it was weird because Collins lost his shoe or whatever on that play. You're asking Taj to come, to help there too, but it was Frank who let Trae blow by him. Honestly, I would have lived and been a little more comfortable even living with a potential Bogdanovich 3, and I know that he was hot at the end of the game, but at least that's a lower percentage shot, than Trae Young at the hoop. And again, Nerlens Noel leaving the game, I think, had a lot more impact than anyone wanted to admit, because Noel has been phenomenal around the rim. He is such an intimidating presence there with his ability to block shots. And also it meant that, I don't know if Gibson would even, been on the floor if Nerlens Noel is healthy there or is able to be in the game. It's a huge thing. Whatever happens with his foot or whatever is going on, that's massive for the Knicks. And yeah, listen, you can look at it and say, at least they were in it. You can't imagine that Randall's going to have another bad night like that. If he does, then the Knicks are doomed. Randall has to get going here, and I can't imagine that Thibodeau would have another bad game like this. He's going to make the adjustments. And, because you can't always expect, and I know Burks has been fantastic, but you can't always expect that he's going to come through in the way he did in the fourth quarter with 18 points and just completely taking over for the Knicks. Why he didn't get rewarded because of that with the final shot being called up for him, I don't know. But, Randall is your superstar. Honestly, Moose, when Randall hit that 3 with 2 minutes left to go, I thought they're winning this game. This is it. Randall had a terrible game. He's going to come through in the last 2 minutes because that's what I'm sort of used to seeing, Randall rising to the occasion.
No, I get it. The only issue I had there was that Young was getting whatever he wanted. He just was getting whatever he wanted at any time. And, the shot that, the Bogdanovich 3 with about 55 seconds to go in the game, contested 3, was just an amazing shot. It just was.
Well, RJ almost had it.
Yeah, almost had it. But, they're two top offensive players that are starters. Randall and Barrett combined to go 12 of 38 from the floor. They need a lot more from those two in Game 2 coming your way Wednesday night. We want to hear from you.